Okay, welcome everyone. You are now joining the very first table talk that has been sponsored by the Survive and Thrive Advocacy Center, by the Big Bend Coalition Against Human Trafficking, and by the International Rescue Committee. This is the first time we've had a table talk, and so I really want to welcome you and thank you for joining us tonight. The program will be recorded, so we'd like you to know that. We'd like you to know that whatever you say will be recorded. We may share notes and information from this program at a later time. And we expect to go today from right now until 8:30 if we have things to talk about. And as Bianca was saying earlier, and I want to thank Bianca for everything you've done to set us up today, we are going to hope this will be a very active session in the middle of our program here. We're going to do a little intro information for you, and then we're going to open it up so that you can have an opportunity to chime in. Bianca will continue to help us with the technology so we can hear you and see you. She'll make you a panelist so you can comment, and we can really have a time together tonight to think about what's going on in your community, how human trafficking intersects with what's going on in your community, and what you might see needs to happen in order to make life better. So without any more talking on my part, I would like to introduce Sika Rose Green. Sika is the Regional Executive Director for the Big Bend, Tallahassee area Children's Home Society. And Sika, you are also a member of our Social Justice Committee here with STAC, and I'd really like to thank you for all of your participation with us and welcome you here today.
Thank you so much, Robin. I am just so glad to be in the presence of you and Pastor Harris and all of those people who are joining us. I would like to take this opportunity just to provide a little bit of context and a few warnings as we embark on our conversation for this evening. So first of all, we acknowledge that with the conversation, there could be some triggers, whether it's conversation, names, whether it is a situation or a scenario. So we want all of our participants to be mindful that some of this conversation could trigger either some experiences you've been through with trafficking or any type of trauma or anything like that. So please be aware of that. Secondly, we'd like to acknowledge that because this is an open forum, we know there actually could be people who are perpetuating human trafficking on this forum today. And so we want to acknowledge that if you are in a situation where you are being trafficked and you'd like to get some help and do not feel comfortable doing that here because we don't know who exactly is on the line, please know that you can contact STAC, you can contact Pastor Harris, you can contact Children's Home Society, and we will be more than happy to get you connected with resources to help emancipate you from that situation. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Robin, and I will provide these reminders throughout our time together this evening. Thank you.
They say that the most used new phrase of 2020 was "you're on mute," and I just did it again. I was muted and started speaking. So thanks, Sika, and you see Graciella's name up on the screen here. Graciela Marquina is STAC's Victim Assistance Director, and she is here to help you if you need that help. So I'd like you to know that she's available. We'll put her contact information in the chat. And Graciela, if you can do that now, that would be awesome if it's easy for you to do it. If not, I'll do it after my introduction today. But it's Graciela at surviveandthriveadvocacy.org. So with that, I just want to take some time to do a little bit of introducing of STAC to you. Many of you I see are friends that we've worked with in the past, but I'd like you to know who and what STAC is. First, that STAC is our regional area anti-human trafficking service agency. We do two things as our mission. The first is to provide case management assistance to people who are trafficked and people who are at risk of being trafficked. It's really important that this function is kind of understood, because really we want to help prevent anyone from being trafficked and being affected by this horrific phenomenon. The second is that we do a lot of awareness and education in our community like this. This type of a program is one that we do. We do lots of other things, and maybe I could ask Bianca, if you can, to put the link to our events in the chat function, because we have a lot going on. This is National Slavery and Human Trafficking Awareness Month, January. And our organization and myself, we work really closely with a group called the Big Bend Coalition Against Human Trafficking, as well as with the International Rescue Committee, to do this, the services and the awareness in our area. So that's who we are, and that's what we do. We do this work in the 6 counties that surround us. You might know it as the 2nd Judicial Circuit, or the DCF Region 2. And that includes Gadsden County. That's why it's especially wonderful to be here. I'd also like to note that Monica Smart Gaines and Monica, I may just ask you if you want to say anything. This is kind of a surprise. We didn't work this out in advance. But Monica, whom you might know, has been active in helping on this issue and many more in the Gadsden community and in Quincy for a very long time. And Monica, you have been, you started this ball rolling 4 years ago, and I want to thank you and acknowledge you. So if you do want to raise your hand and say anything, especially during the program, please do, because you've had a long view of what's been going on with this program. So I don't see Monica stepping up at the moment, but if you do later, we sure want to hear from you. So I'd like to take a moment now, if there aren't any comments or questions, is to do a little just basic bottom line kind of heads up about what is human trafficking. And to do that, I'm going to share my screen and go to my PowerPoint and get a get my oops. There we go. Sorry about that. Does everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Is this good? Okay. So the first thing to mention is, what is human trafficking? And really, and then again, to let you know who our sponsors are. So you all probably know human trafficking as a crime, which of course it is. But also, very importantly, it's a human rights violation. So, I don't want us all to get wrapped up in the fact that this is a criminal justice issue only. It is a health issue. It's an education issue. It's a faith community issue. It is an education issue. And it is at its core a human rights violation. Globally, over 40 million are affected. And in the United States, it's really important to kind of think about this, that there are 1.3 trafficked persons statistically per 1,000. And so if you think about what the population of Gadsden County is, think about what that would mean for each 1,000 people in your area. Another reason why we know this issue is important is that, based on the calls to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, Florida is 3rd in the nation when it comes to trafficking. You see this slide here that really gives you some perspective. You might see kind of along the I-4 corridor. Certainly this is around I-10, and then down here, I-95, and around here, I-75 and 275. These are population areas where we know there's a lot of trafficking that takes place. I will tell you that these are just based on calls to the hotline, and trafficking is a highly hidden phenomenon. We know that most of the cases, especially now during COVID-19, are hidden. We are isolated, kids are isolated, families are isolated, we're not traveling, we're not moving. And when this is going on, it can easily stay very hidden. So, you know, these statistics always make me feel like, okay, we know we're number 3 and based on the calls, but we also know that there are a lot more cases of human trafficking in our communities. The basics of human trafficking are these three boxes. So an act of trafficking can be any of these actions. Somebody can be a recruiter, excuse me. Someone can harbor or have somebody who is trafficked in their home or in their job site. They might move a person, or they might just get a person. For example, somebody who is brought to this country to work as a nanny or a housekeeper, or somebody who is convinced, a youth at a high school, convinced to go out with a new guy, say an older boyfriend. You know, that older boyfriend, that guy could be seducing or getting her involved with a recruitment into human trafficking. The means are important, which is, it could be force. And I'd like you to take the movie Taken out of your mindset. Most of the time, it is not a forced situation. Rarely do we ever see, and advocates and law enforcement around the country ever see, kids being snatched off the streets or in a park from a parking lot. It doesn't happen. What happens is there's this coercion that takes place, and there's a lot of fraud, lies, promises made by somebody. I'll be your boyfriend. I'll get you a new job. When we were doing some help in this area after Hurricane Michael, we had somebody telling a young woman, come, I'll help you get your FEMA benefits. That was the come on. That was the promise, that someone is going to be a benefactor or somehow befriend an individual. And they're coerced into it. So the little red here about unless a minor means if someone is under the age of 18 under Florida law and federal law, you don't even need force, fraud, and coercion. A child cannot consent to a sex act for sex trafficking, so that's not present for Florida or federal law. And under Florida law, you don't have to show force and fraud, fraud, or coercion for a minor who is labor trafficked, who is said you have to work in this factory or field or restaurant or whatever it is. Federal law does require force, fraud, and coercion. I know I'm getting all legal, and it's what I do as I'm a lawyer, but just know that these elements, there has to be that kind of means, and the purposes are here too. It's some sort of labor or service. Often you might see a debt attached to it. So the debt bondage is the trafficker will say to somebody, you have to work here until you pay off your $10,000 travel debt or your housing debt to me. Or, you know, somebody is involved in the sex trade or other kind of enslavement. Here is what it looks like laid out, that human trafficking under federal and Florida law is divided in both between labor and sex trafficking. And here's your definition. So, and know that you could be a recruiter or a harborer or someone who transports or provides a person for commercial sex or any sex act. And by the way, we often think that means prostitution. It might, but it could also include any sex act, which could include stripping, dancing, camming, any of anything that is exchanged for something of value. This could include too with youth who sometimes are induced to perform an act in order to have a place to stay, or anybody who does it because they need drugs or other kinds of subsistence. And then the definition of labor trafficking is here as well. So you can see that you know, there's a whole bunch of law which we're not going to go into tonight, but we just wanted to ground you on this. Sometimes people confuse trafficking and smuggling. And what I just want you to know is they are two different things. And one piece of this that you have to just remember is that smuggling is a voluntary act. I might choose to cross a border and hire a coyote or anybody to carry me across the border and take me to, you know, Texas or Florida or any place. That's me making that decision, paying for it. And then even though the travel might be horrific and very difficult, it is still my choice to do it. Trafficking is not a crime against a border, it's a crime against a person. And really for trafficking, you don't even have to cross a border. You don't have to cross a county line. You don't have to go outside your front door to be trafficked if someone can do the things that were in those three boxes, if someone does those things. And the commodity is the person. Now, very often we see cases where people say, I want to go to Florida, and they might pay somebody to help them get here. And then when they arrive, the trafficker would say, you can't leave unless you work here in my factory or in this place and have sex with these men, or whatever the coercion or that force is, forced labor. The other thing I want to share with you is that this is I want to take a wider lens vision, if you will, about what the push and pull factors are around human trafficking. Those push factors are really kind of the basis for our table talk tonight. We want to help you connect with these vulnerabilities. These are all examples of when someone who is trafficked might experience any of these things or a number of these things. And this constellation of vulnerabilities makes them be vulnerable to being trafficked. So I always say, if someone is helping for someone to be housed, or someone to be free of a drug dependency, or who is helping someone with their education, they are actually doing anti-trafficking work, because they're helping someone to be not so vulnerable. And then the pull factors that keep people and that we see all the time with the folks that we work with the survivors we assist, is that we see them tell these stories. You know, the trafficker made them do it, or they withheld drugs, or they threatened them, or they said they were going to deport them, and in another way harm them. So know that these pull factors, these coercive factors, and these needs that people have, like, I need a roof over my head, I need food for my kids, I need medicine for my mother, my children. These are all things that traffickers use to keep someone in a trafficking situation and pull them in. Finally, I want to end my presentation this evening with just a quick reminder that these vulnerabilities that I mentioned are all things that are also common to people that are being affected most strongly during COVID-19. We're seeing that Black and Brown communities, people who have less say-so in their economic well-being, they are being increasingly more vulnerable and increasingly dying at higher rates than others. So know that this particular phenomenon of human trafficking and of COVID have a lot in common with each other. And that's another reason why we wanted to be with you tonight, to talk about these issues and to share, you know, what's going on in our world, and hopefully to kind of raise them and talk about what's going on in Gadsden County and what we might all do to work together. So with that, I will close. Now, I'd like to take a moment to switch gears, and I wasn't able to, oh, thank you very much. The signs can be overt or subtle, and know that if you need any more information about this, our website, which is in the chat, is a place to go. We've got tons of material in there. So, and we'll go back to these as we need to, particularly during the talk that Pastor Harris is going to give. And I'd like to take a moment now to introduce Pastor Harris, who is a STAC board member. He is the chair of the Social Justice Committee, of which Sika also serves on, and Bianca as well, and many others of us on the board and with STAC. And we're so grateful to you, Pastor, for your leadership and your advocacy and your caring and compassion on this issue. And you are, you're just a guiding light for us. So, so one of the things that happened a while back is we had an event in September called Imagining Freedom. We, of course, had to do it online because of COVID. And Pastor Harris did a wonderful introduction to that event and to the issue of human trafficking. So, Pastor, what I'd like to do is show this video, and then we'll start our table talk.
All right.
All right. Thanks so much.
I was introduced to STAC by Robin one Saturday morning in Quincy. I must say I was blown away with the content and the idea that human lives in the 21st century are being enslaved, used like animals, separated from their families, preyed on for their inabilities, preyed on for their lack of, so that a few can attain personal and financial gain. We're talking about trafficking of human lives, and anyone is vulnerable at any time. My heart was troubled, and an unrest arose in me that was incomprehensible. I told my wife we must do something, and there was Stack. Stack's mission to support survivors of human trafficking and to bring awareness to the community that human trafficking doesn't happen just in big cities. It is right here in our community, in Leon County, in Gadsden County, and throughout North Florida. And that really caught my attention, that the small town of Quincy, my neighboring county, Leon, there and throughout North Florida, that human beings trafficking girls and boys, men and women, are being called on to produce sex acts. They are trafficked for labor also. And I have grandchildren. As a matter of fact, I have 14 granddaughters. And I could not imagine what I would do if I lost any of them to this injustice for profit. Stack's overall goal is to address the moral underpinning, the economic injustice and injustice that underlies human trafficking, and the values Stack promote of fairness and equity, equality. As all of us are aware that COVID-19 is upon us. It, along with sex and labor trafficking, are menaces to our society. Both COVID-19 and trafficking both disproportionately affect Black communities and brown communities and all people of color, making people more vulnerable than ever, both to being trafficked and also making vulnerable to the pandemic. This is not a coincidence. This is a tragedy, as a matter of fact. And Stack is on the battlefield, and we're in the fight. We at Stack we're here to address trafficking and see it in a larger context of our world where people are exploited and vulnerable. We are linked with global movement to end human trafficking, and look at, we can do the work here knowing that right now. Now, I'm fascinated with trees. I'm particularly fascinated with the redwood tree. This tremendous and powerful force I found not only grows. A redwood tree never grows alone. I researched and found out that the way this powerful individual yet inclusive tree grows is that underneath the soil, all of the roots interconnect with each other in order to grow to this powerful force. In other words, they partner with each other, they support each other, and as a result, you have this powerful, tall force to reckon with. Stack stands with partners and interconnect around this region: faith community, healthcare professional, justice system, social services, neighborhood, businesses, because everyone has a role to play in learning more about human trafficking and knowing what to do and how to help. Because Stack knows that together we are a powerful force to be reckoned with. So what can we do to prevent trafficking and exploitation? Here it is: work together to get at the root of society's inequities, build up each other, and work for economic justice. Now, we at Stack host Imaging Freedom to highlight what we all can do to work together to connect with our farmers, businesses, and one another, and to celebrate those who are doing this work right now. Support fair labor and becoming conscious consumer, or a conscious consumer. Look at this is what Stack is all about.
Thank you so much, Pastor Harris, and I'll turn it over to you now, and let's start our table talk.
Amen. Hey, good. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad that all you've tuned in. And of course, this will not be a monologue. This will hope to be a dialogue, trialogue, and any other kind of log we can have. We'd like all for you to talk and gather in with us tonight as we address, I believe, one of a very serious issue that has come upon us, especially during these times. You know, times where we are locked in, can't go out, where we're trying to be selective, and all the other things we have to do to keep ourselves healthy. But people take advantage of good things also. People take advantage of people who are at a disadvantage. So tonight, one of the things I found out that one of the most intimidating, but also neglected things in our lives is that we don't talk enough to each other. Our situations are, we get in situations, circumstances, but we don't communicate. And I think that Gaston County is one of the most unique places to have conversations. Why do I say that? I say that because one is that we are a well-diverse community, which means that we have to talk to each other, we have to communicate with each other. And we don't do that sometimes, not because we are afraid, not because that we just don't have an opportunity to get to each other and have conversations. So tonight, I invite you to this table talk because I think it's going to be very important. It is very important, and it will lead us into places that I want you to experience in terms of educating, in terms of knowing more about what's going on, and also becoming a participant, not only just for tonight, but also for a lifetime, because we need each other. We need each other, right? We need each other. So, as I told you earlier, that I'm a fan of the redwood tree. I sounded crazy for a preacher to be a pastor to be connected to redwood trees, but I love redwood trees because they are amazing to me at the height that they can grow and the power they have. And through what they do, basically, they connect on the root, and by connecting together, they can become a very powerful force. I think it was Victor Hugo that said, nothing is, what he said, nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. Nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And I believe that this is a time for us right now, at this time in the world, this time in this century, that we come together, communicate, and that we build and become a very powerful force, so that we can address a lot of issues for the people who are not able to address them themselves. So how this is going to work tonight? Well, I'm going to put something on the table. I'm going to assume something, so don't assume it. I'm going to assume something, and in my assumption, I need you to help me. All right, I'm going to assume that everybody believes that if we work together, we can accomplish something. That's what I'm going to assume, and that if everybody were to believe that we can accomplish something, and so if you're walking with me in that, I want you to look at what are some of the social justice issues that you have been confronted with in this community. Now, note, if you please, Stack is the head of social justice in my life, because Stack deals with issues not just what you see on the surface, but so many other things that they deal with. So, but you have to be able to identify a lot of issues if you're going to be able to integrate them, or if you want to keep them from being segregated and not being able to operate within the context we're in. So what are some of the social justice issues that you have identified in this county that you would like to address tonight? Give me one or two. Please type. And while you're typing, I'll still talk. All right.
And we can.
So what I found out basically is that Stack itself is our purpose is connect Stack basically with the social justice outcome, because it is a social justice issue. Now, there's several things we're going to talk about tonight while you're typing. One is that we're going to talk about COVID-19. We're going to talk about healthcare, jobs, community violence, and economic welfare, knowing that all of those are social justice issues, but also all of those can lead to, as Robin has said, lead to sex trafficking, labor trafficking, and it begins in such a silent way that you don't even know this is happening. So that's why we want to address them. So any issue that you've had, give me a conversation. Any social justice issue that you would like to talk about right now.
And Pastor, I'd like to help everybody know too that if they wanted to also speak, then yes, they can do that as well. I see Rebecca has written lack of access to justice, access to the court or to an attorney, and to agencies that can tell you what your rights are, can inform you of your rights. Amen.
Okay, well, and I think that's, excuse me, Stack has experience with this, and perhaps Robin would like to talk about it. Experience in terms of how we have come together to deal with those issues, because we realize that is a major issue sometimes when it comes to trafficking, sex trafficking, just to deal with the injustices at all. That is a major issue. So Robin, you want to just address that, please?
Sure. And actually, if Rebecca, if you wanted to speak, I would welcome you too, to just chime in here, and if we could make Rebecca a panelist, because we were lucky enough over the past couple of years to be working with Rebecca and making referrals of clients back and forth through her work with Legal Services of North Florida. But
Okay.
one of the things we definitely want to do is let this world know that legal services can't represent every single person with every need that's out there. So Rebecca, would you like to talk a little bit about what you've seen and some of the challenges in terms of social justice?
Robin, I lost you for a minute. Did you ask me to address the challenges of social justice?
Yes, and human trafficking, yes. And then
Okay.
we have by the way, Tracy Stallworth, I want to put you on deck here too, so maybe you can talk next as well if you'd like. But yes, Rebecca, what made you talk about this and what's the connection to lack of access to justice and trafficking?
Okay, well, good evening. I work at the Legal Services of North Florida Quincy office. I'm actually a disaster recovery attorney. A lot of my clients have been victims of Hurricane Michael, but like Robin said, I used to work solely with survivors of human trafficking. And for Legal Services in North Florida, access to justice is a huge issue that we address every day for everyone, especially people out in the rural areas. It take, even to come to us who are a free service, it's an hour and a half to come to our office. And a lot of people can't manage that. Or you have to get on the phone and do an intake, which asks a lot of personal questions about domestic violence, sexual assault. We're trying to, some people can't talk. There's a lack of access to justice if an abuser or trafficker is in the room with you. You can't just pick up the phone and call me and ask me confidentially what would happen if I report this person. Would I have to go to court? Would my life be in danger? Could you help me get safety? They don't even have a way to ask us that. So at Legal Services in North Florida, we work with other agencies like STAC who might be going into these homes, like Department of Children and Families, like Children's Home Services. We educate them, we give them our brochures so that when they're around some of these victims and survivors, they can share, hey, you might be able to get free legal help confidentially. They can just talk to you about what your options are. At Legal Services in North Florida, we frequently have what's called Justice on the Block, meaning we come to you, we come to your block, especially in rural communities in the evenings. Again, even access to justice can be a problem if you have to work all day during the week. We're open Monday through Thursday. So we try to have evening clinics and events that people can come out to get legal advice on the spot, fill out an application. But for victims of trafficking who are in it right that minute, some of them do, as we talked about, they're not being held with chains. They might have a limited amount of freedom where they could actually get information, but they don't know it. They don't know that they can go online, but they don't know they're trafficked. That's a huge problem as far as trying to get them to justice. But even if they suspect they're trafficked, they may not be able to call the human trafficking hotline, who could refer them to us or to STAC. They just don't know that we're out there, or they're just too scared. They're scared for their life that if they tell, they're going to be killed. Their family back home is going to be killed. That's a big one. Even in the United States, if a teenager is seduced into and groomed into trafficking and then stuck in it, they're told, I'll kill your little sister if you tell what I've been doing with you on the weekends and forcing you to have sex, with my clients on the weekend. Like some teenagers that we know have been in that exact position and they didn't tell because they feared for their family's life. So I think that addresses it a little, Robin. I could go on forever, but I don't want to be greedy and selfish.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I thank you for even explaining it, because one of the things that I think is very pertinent to this is how hidden it is, how clandestine it is. So people really can't really sometimes see what's going on, one, and secondly, this is hidden so well that people's lives are threatened if they even talk about certain things, which means there's a wall that's up, there's a wall that's been placed there, and from a community perspective, how do we break down those walls? I think that's a very important. How do we break down those walls? And can anyone suggest to me, help us how to break down those walls? How do we, how can we help us, hinder these walls from coming up in some sense of the word? Anybody have an idea about that? How can we do that?
And I wonder too if Mr. Stallworth, who had
Okay.
mentioned some of these challenges too,
Okay.
along with mentioning those challenges, might have some ideas. Pastor, what do you think about addressing?
Yes, Mr. Stallworth.
Yes. Thank you for having me on. I'm a community organizer, and I'm with Faith in Florida. And so I applaud you guys' efforts for what you're doing, because we're addressing a lot of the issues that you're dealing with. But I think one of the key things is to have exposure, either through social media. This should be something that should be echoed all the time, wherever you go. This should be echoed through mentors, through parents, through other safe haven places, to be able to expose this clandestine secret that's taking place, dealing with but dealing with trafficking, you know what I mean? Because people are not consciously aware of it, and they don't have the optic sensory to see what's really going on. And it's so close, you know what I mean? And maybe about 6 months ago, it had been brought to my attention that some ladies almost got kidnapped by some people, you know what I mean? But I know that sex traffickers are always looking for people to get people from one location and then traffic them to another location. And when they disrupt that communication and they don't know who they can contact, they wind up getting deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And, I think I put in there about drugs, lack of education. A lot of people are very vulnerable because they don't have education. They don't have a high school diploma. Their parents don't have education. And so it becomes a repetitive cycle. And I just think that we need to be able to do something more aggressively than what we're really doing. And I applaud once again you guys for what you guys are doing, because it shows an aggressive nature. But I think people need to realize that this is real and it could happen to one of your loved ones.
Pastor, if I could jump in, do you mind?
Oh, please do. Please do.
If I jump in, I think first of all, what Tracy is saying is absolutely true. It is a hidden, and I think Robin would agree, it is one of those hidden epidemics that you just do not see. People think of trafficking normally only when you're talking about sex. You're talking
Yes.
about sex trafficking. What they don't see is that trafficking happens in every zip code. So we're specifically talking about Gadsden County, but trafficking happens in every zip code. And on college campuses, it is an epidemic. And it is important for all of us when we talk about terrorism, we talk about child abuse, we say, if you see something, say something. So that is why it is incumbent on everyone to become familiar with not only the overt signs of trafficking, but those covert signs that someone may be trafficked. If they're jumpy, if they don't have their own ID, you ask them for proof of who they are and they don't have it. And a lot of times that's because the trafficker has it. And understanding that it's a grooming process. And many times what traffickers are looking for are those weaknesses and those vulnerabilities, like everyone's talking about, education, food, shelter, and all of those different things. So people do not look at Leon County, Gadsden County, Wakulla County, all of us, they don't think about us being a hotbed of trafficking, but we absolutely are. And you would be surprised as you walk down the street, as you go into shopping centers, as you go into malls, there are traffickers there, and there are children, females, males, young boys that are absolutely victims sitting right in front of you.
Thank you for that. And one of the things that I heard that Mr. Stallworth say, and of course, Sika, that when we look at this as it does not affect me, I'm not responsible, then becomes it's a very dangerous place for a community to be in. And so one of the questions I want to bring to the table now, how as a community, I think, can we, as I asked, can we work better together, and how can we break down these walls? And what information, it's the education aspect anyway, what information do you need to better understand trafficking and how it's affecting the community, so that we can start breaking down these walls. Does anybody have any suggestion? I know Mr. Sarver said education and being more forthcoming with the situation, and I do agree with that. One person asked what's the age range for trafficking, and I think that Robin had put something had a PowerPoint that talked about the age range in some sense of the word. And I think there is no age range, but I'm correct. Anyone can be trafficked. It doesn't have to be a particular age range. And I also want to put on the table also that it doesn't necessarily have to be girls all the time, that boys are also trafficked also for both things, for laboring as well as sex also. And that's something we don't talk about a whole lot. I also want to put on the table also that we can't, and I know Robin said it before, we can't just isolate as being in one culture. It's everywhere, all around us. So much so that it's as Seeker said, it's hidden. So, but the idea today here is how do we connect? How do we connect the social justice issues? Because that's an injustice. That's an injustice. It's injustice because it places people in it captures people, it hinders people, it imprisons people, enslaves people, it takes away their dignity, it takes away their livelihood in a sense, in order they make them victims, if you please. So how can we address this? What's your suggestion of how we address all of this and break these walls down and come together as a community to do it? That's what I'm on the table right now.
And Pastor, we've gotten a couple questions, and I think I can both address what you're saying and answer some questions here. Someone asked, is a call to the human trafficking hotline or call taken immediately, or if there is a waiting list? And by asking that question, it gives us the opportunity to share the National Human Trafficking Hotline number, as well as STAC's number, and explain that that is a resource. So if you were to just Google the National Human Trafficking Hotline, you'd get a wealth of resources. So going back to your point, Pastor, of being informed and aware, yeah. It's one of the best websites that's out there, as well as STAC's. We have lots of local information. So I wanted that person who's asking the question to answer their question, and also to say sometimes for the national hotline, you do have to wait. And we do our best locally to answer your call and respond as soon as possible as well. Like most things, I'd say just call both if you need to. Call locally first. We are an agency that gets referred from the hotline. If you called the hotline, they would say call STAC if you're in our area. So you can call us directly with this information. So thanks for your question. And we also had some ideas come across the chat, Pastor, about what you're asking, involving school districts. And also remembering that there are vulnerable adults and people who have other challenges who are also victims here.
Yes, I agree. And so that brings us back to the 5 points that we had. Bring me back to the 5 points that we had at the bottom in terms of COVID-19, all the things that we're going through right now in the world today. Which makes them vulnerable. So I do believe there are areas outside that we can deal with, like helping people overcome poverty, help them see things differently, educate them differently, to be around them, to communicate with them differently. It will help us in some sense where identify a lot of things that are going on in the community. Do any of you really see the linkage between not being employed and social justice, and also also trafficking? Anybody identify that link? And between that, COVID-19, how it makes people very vulnerable because they don't have, and it makes them very vulnerable. And so our goal, our task actually is a great task before us, but it can be done if there's a unity in the community where we can address issues and be educated about it also, and be very educated about it. So so we'll know how to identify certain issues as they come before us. I asked Robin to put up if she will, because the person asked the question about the age piece. If you will put that back on the screen again for us, yes, okay. The push and the pulls. I asked to put that up again for us. When you see all the things that the factors, the push factors and the pull factors, then you can kind of see how this all comes together, how people are caught up into the situation and can't get out of it. And this is it's amazing also that when a person has gotten caught up in situations, it doesn't mean they don't want to get out of it. They just think sometimes it's impossible to get out of it, and then they can become so I'm going to call it. It becomes they can't find another way to live. They don't think there's another way to live except this particular way. But I asked Robin to put this back up to see some of the push and pull factors that affect the individual in a community that I think are very, very important. The economic aspect of it, the threats, the coercion, how the victim is identified, and all those things also. Okay, Robin, thank you very much on that.
Sorry, I'm still learning how to appropriately share my screen without all the other stuff in there. Pastor, we had some other comments. Someone asked, considering the pandemic, and I think it's really important too to think about this. How can we help when most of us aren't exiting our homes? Are we being negligent of helping our brothers and sisters? And maybe we can throw out there how we do this in the pandemic. I guess maybe we can pose this to all the panelists.
Yes.
Sika, Graciela, Tracy, anyone else who would like to speak, feel free to raise your hand and we'll make you a panelist so you can also chime in.
Yeah, so I will jump in. I think that what we know for sure is that COVID has handicapped us in lots of different ways, because the message is stay home if you can. You've got a lot of remote learning, remote working, all kinds of things going on. What I can tell you is in the child welfare arena, while we've seen calls to the hotline go down during COVID, it does not mean that children are not out there being victims of abuse because they are being held captive. They're not going to school. You don't have as many eyes on them. And I think we could say the same is true for anyone who might be a victim of trafficking. This to me, and I will tell you, I did the predictive index, and the predictive index says that I am an altruist. And that means that I believe that there are solutions to every problem. And one of the things that we have to do as a community is understand that we are, and I think Pastor would go there with me, we are our brothers and our sisters' keeper. Yes. And so while we tell women, we tell our children, we tell the elderly, when you are out, be very aware of your surroundings so that you don't end up being a victim of a crime or a victim of something unfortunate. I think the same holds true when you are looking and trying to be aware of things around you. When you see a child that flinches, when you see an adult that looks unusually thin, if you are noticing a person, because I think there's also a thought out there that all traffickers are men, and that's not true. The thought is all traffickers are strangers. That's not true. We have children in foster care who have been trafficked by their parents, their grandparents, their cousins. So that's why this thing, when Robin and Stack took this on, I do have to wonder if they understood the mass, just the enormity of what we're talking about, because there isn't a typical situation. There isn't a textbook example of what trafficking is. And to go back to the question about will help be provided immediately, it takes a minute to emancipate somebody from a trafficking situation, because you have to remember it's a grooming process. Little by little, their basic needs are replaced. Then the threats come in. Then their families might be threatened. And so you have to unlearn all of that behavior in order to properly emancipate from a trafficking situation. There have to be safe plans that are put in place. There has to be a trust built between the victim and the entity that is trying to pull them out of that. So to get back to the original question, I don't think it's about being derelict in duties. I think it's just about having an awareness. You have to go out and get food. You have to go out, maybe not get gas because nobody's driving, but get food. You may go out because you're stir crazy. Just be very cognizant of the areas around you. Pick up on clues. You may not get a name, but you might be able to get a description. So when you call, Tallahassee and Leon County and Gadsden counties, law enforcement are keenly aware of what's going on. And, you know, we just had this big sting where they broke, you know, they ended up arresting 161 people in Leon County alone. That's just Leon County, and it took more than a year for them to be able to do that. So I think that's the answer. Be aware, and if you see something, don't be afraid to say something.
Thank you, Sika. Thank you so much on that. Awareness is very important. I see Robin has placed our billboard on the screen, which means that we're advocating for the rights of those who have been victimized, and we are making it aware to the public also. So Robin, you want to say anything about that, or just want to show it?
Well, I wanted to share that, and to also do that in response to a couple of questions that came in. One is, how do you get the word out during a pandemic? And this is something that we're doing. Bianca's going to share also information about our toolkit. So we now have billboards up. Would love to get these in Gadsden County, and would love to maybe collaborate with people locally. I know that one of our participants here is talking about how do we do this work, and I welcome any collaboration with anybody to try to do things like get billboards up like this in English and Spanish during the pandemic, because we're not going to forums, we're not going to you know, churches and to public gatherings at all. So the way we do it is we do it through social media. We have a very aggressive social media campaign that I would love. We're going to put our toolkit up in a moment too, so you can have a link to that. And what that is it's posting information on your own Instagram, Facebook, all of your accounts about the fact that trafficking is real and that there's help out there. So I wanted you to see that. Bianca's just posted that. And also quick answer another question about whether hotels or motels penalized for allowing sex trafficking, and let you know that yes, there's a whole big movement to hold these folks liable for trafficking in the hotel motel industry. I'd encourage you all to look at the calendar that's on our website. We're going to have a big program on the 21st, sponsored by FSU College of Law, where we're going to have a civil attorney talk about liability issues, as well as what the private sector can do to be proactive, because that's the other thing. You know, you can punish people for turning a blind eye to trafficking going on in hotels and motels. And at the same time, you can work with existing hotels and motels to become educated about how to recognize it, how to help survivors and victims, how to call the police, how to prevent it, and how to be a helping hand instead of a blind eye to when things are going on in this area. So we're getting lots of questions in, Pastor. I want to direct you to the chat. Is there any particular area or community that is targeted in Gadsden County? I'll ask the people who live in Gadsden, is there a place where trafficking is or isn't, or is everyone vulnerable?
One of the places I think, a couple of places, I think one of them particularly was at the I-10 intersection in Midway, the truck stop area. That's one of the areas that have been identified. They put many people very vulnerable at the area also, because it's on the exit. Just get off and you're right there at several stations and stuff like that. And I think that the Gadsden County Sheriff's Department is aware of that. But I have you will see people walking in those areas, and especially when you get to the nighttime piece. So that's just a very vulnerable area in that area right there. And I'm quite sure there are more, but I was aware of that. We've all come. I think we've come to the conclusion that it will take all of us working together to do this, to handle it. And I think the question about the COVID was a very important question, because sometimes people think because we're locked in the house, we can't do anything. I don't go outside, so therefore I'm hindered from doing certain things. And I'm very glad we had that question, because it teaches us that even though we're inside does not mean that we can't communicate on the outside. And I think we have to really push the social media piece, because that's what's at our hands. It's not that we can't communicate, we have to want to communicate, which means that the idea of people being trafficked, the idea of people being captured, young and old, and labor and sex trafficking has to be a part of your challenge, and to the point that I'm concerned about it. Secondly, I go back to and seek is that we are our brother's keeper, whether we like it or not. We are responsible for this. And what I do oftentimes, I put myself in the place of others the best that I can. I know I can't really feel it, or I'm not in it, but I always think, if I want this to happen to me, how would I respond if it was one who's close to me? And I tell you the truth, I don't think I could handle it. So I know that it is pressing and on people who are not as well, who are not well off, who have been caught into the COVID, the job piece, and also in the violent piece. Because one thing I think trafficking, from a subliminal aspect, your mind can be trafficked. It means that people start doing a whole lot of other things because their minds have been taken from them. And so you get to violence and all those type of things. That's a trafficking aspect of it, because now people, they can't see, they don't know things now, and they begin to act out in certain ways like that. And so we have to find a way to understand it goes way beyond what it looks like on the surface. This is a deep-rooted piece, and it stays there. And the people who are profiting from this do not have, to me, a humane part of their body. Their moral values are gone, because if they can do those things to people, then ultimately, and they're fighting to hold on to this also. And I think that's what we have to really want to do it. And I'm putting that, saying that because this should not be our last conversation. We should continue to talk about this in Gadsden County continually. Don't let this one piece stop us. And then and more we talk about it, the more we learn about it. And I'm learning and we'll take the conversation where it has to go.
And Pastor,
whatever we got to talk about, we'll talk about it, to make sure that there's a great and complete understanding about what trafficking is and social injustices are. And so we're going to do that. So I'm going to put I think Bianca's going to do that, but I want you to keep in your mind that we don't want this would not be the last one. And I want to know how and maybe that's going to be what Bianca's going to ask.
Well, we have actually what's kind of, I think, wonderful about programs like this is that they kind of take on a life of their own in some respect sometimes. And, and I'm just wondering, Pastor, what you think, Aria, excuse me, forgive me for mispronounce. I'm sorry. Ira Caesar has had her hand up and she'd like to jump in here.
Yes.
And then
yes.
we also have some Facebook questions that maybe we can take in when she's done. Okay.
Yes. This question is sort of like off the human trafficking, but this question is about mental ill individuals. Individuals that have mental illness, health problems, and they're adults that are living with their parents, and sometimes they get out of control, and they have their parents of these mental ill adults have to call first responders. Is there a register to let these responders know that the individuals have a mental illness issue? Is there some kind of register or some kind of way that these officers can know before they reach the home of these individuals that have been called by the parents who have them that are out of control? Is there some kind of way of them knowing that they are mentally ill before they get there?
Yeah, Sika.
Yeah, I will jump in from the standpoint that, and I hear where you're going with this, because what we know is that because mental illness does have a prevalence, many times there can be issues with law enforcement and those who are mentally ill, and they're having some sort of episode that causes someone in the home or someone that they are dealing with to have to call law enforcement. So first of all, there isn't a registry. That is not something that we probably want to do when it comes to those who are dealing with mental illness, because we already know that there's a stigma and we don't want there to be some sort of further stigma that kind of sticks with them. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, when law enforcement is called, that is the time to say that the person that I'm calling about does have a history of mental illness. And then we have what's called a Baker Act, and you may be familiar with that. And so sometimes that's what needs to happen, an involuntary hold for that person until they can de-escalate, if there are medication issues, trying to get their medication correct and all of that. Most importantly, the person that needs to have that first responder come to help with the situation needs to be clear when they are on the phone, when they are making that call, that this person is having a mental episode. That way, when first responders come, they know that they're coming to a situation where a mental health crisis is taking place, rather than, and this goes back to us understanding as a whole, just as a people, as a human race, that we have to know how to de-escalate ourselves so that we can be calm and not add to an already tense situation. And so that's probably going to be the best way to try to handle that. And so there are even other groups that talk about how we deal with mental illness and law enforcement and all of that. So I think what we can do is take a mental note and be sure that we pass that on to some of our other groups when we're talking about that and interfacing with law enforcement.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes, right, yes. Sister Vaughn?
Yes. Hi, how you doing? I just wanted to say that as far as the mental health thing, yes, there is a number. I wrote it down in my notes, but I have so many notes I can't seem to find it, but I will get it to Pastor as soon as possible. But there's a number that you can call, and you want to call them before you call the police. That way they can arrive on the scene to assist the situation, because there are the professionals to deal with a situation like this. When police may jump to a conclusion, or if that person make a wrong move and get shot or something, so that won't happen, these people will come on the scene first. And it is in Leon and Gaston County surrounding areas. Like I said, I don't know the number, but I will get it to Pastor as soon as possible. But yes, there is, it's a group out there, for this, that will arrive on the scene first. You can call them, then you can call the cops. That way, we won't have a shooting, or just because someone made a wrong move and they're not really violent, or they're not on their medication. It could be any type of thing, schizophrenia or so what have you. But yes, there is a number, because I found out, and I did not know, but I found out probably about a month ago. So I will get that number to Pastor as soon as possible. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
That's very helpful information. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And it looks like there's information about to ask both the chief and the sheriff. And Sika, you mentioned that there might be a rapid response team that you can look up and get that information as well. Definitely a really, really important issue. we got a call in from our Facebook Live post, our Facebook Live happening now, where someone asked, can someone please expound upon the relationship between homelessness and trafficking that was discussed recently on the Perspectives radio show? And I can kick that off, Pastor, if you'd like. We
Yes.
know that homelessness is a great vulnerability, and it's one of the things that we did prior to COVID as Stack's advocate, Graciela Marquina, would be at the shelter. And Graciela, if you would like to talk a little bit about the vulnerability between homelessness, if you're available, and trafficking. But what we see is that people, because of their vulnerability, because they don't have a home, they can be very susceptible to these come-ons that traffickers have that we talked about earlier, that they're economically in need. And Graciela, would you like to take over?
Yes, thank you. I also wanted to answer your question before about how service providers like us see our clients, and I wanted to just to clarify that for everyone, that we're doing like everyone else in schools and the doctors. We're seeing clients by Zoom. It is really difficult to communicate even by Zoom, seeing each other, but we are doing our best. So if you guys have any suggestions about how to communicate with clients and survivors, possible victims, let us know. And that's a great question about homelessness and human trafficking. Before COVID, I used to go to the Carney Center, and I was just trying to talk to people and understand more about their situations, and mainly to do awareness on human trafficking. And I find out that people that are unhoused, they for some reason they are for example at the shelter at the Carney Center, and they are nobody wants to be unhoused. Nobody wants to be in that situation, but they were sometimes was mental illness, sometimes was addictions, sometimes people just really lose what they have, and they find themselves in a situation where they need help. And I don't want to sound like a commercial, but the Carney Center was doing great, and I think they are still doing great. What I wanted to say is that because they are very vulnerable, and that's what one of the things that traffickers prey on. They need the people that are unhoused, they need hope. They need a lot of help, and traffickers know that, and traffickers know how to read what people need, whether it's companionship or some kind of hope of having a job, for example. That did happen. While people are looking for a job, there is suddenly these jobs online where you have to move immediately. Don't tell anyone. Just bring khaki pants and a shirt, and we will, you will give a big surprise to your family that you have a job, and we meet you tomorrow. There are so many things online nowadays that it's making the trafficking easier, unfortunately. So that's what it is. I, like Rebecca said before, I don't want to take a lot of the time with this, but it's vulnerability. And the thing again, if somebody had issues with addictions, then the traffickers can come and approach and kind of resolve the problem, but they are going to exploit them and never be fair, never let them go, because unfortunately for traffickers, us humans are commodities. So that's a sad reality. I want to also quickly talk about computer. Nowadays, I wanted to say that, as Robin explained that before, it is very unlikely that a child is going to be taken from the street. The traffickers use a lot of apps. They post themselves as a somebody their age, and by then the traffickers had already I guess study the person, and they know what they are lacking of or what they want, or the places they went to, and then they do that. They use later on people. So I hope that's a small answer.
It's a big question, and not a lot of
Yes.
time left, unfortunately, for her program. But thank you, Graciela. There's so much more to be said, and it's kind of opening the door to maybe getting to the next sort of segment of our program, Pastor, about where we should go next. And we've had a lot of people chime in and say, how do we keep the conversation going? What are other ways that we can, continue to spread the word? One of the questions was about how you can do this work during COVID as well. And earlier, if you scroll up the chat, you'll see a link to a toolkit, which is a community toolkit that we just put online, that allows, again, you to stay active, as well as other places on our own website where you can get more information and know that we, again, can continue the conversation. So Pastor, I'd like to ask you about how we do keep these table talks going. How should we do them? How can we get input from the community about, do you all think we should do them?
Well, we have some participants, right? And so let's see what they say about that. Just chime in. And what's your?
Yeah. Do you think we should have table talks to focus on education or kids or a particular topic, or should we have some that focus on areas of Gadsden County, like Quincy or Greensboro or Chattahoochee or other parts? Should we focus on particular topics? We really want to hear from you all. If you could put in the chat some ideas.
Yes. Because we are going to do another one, but it sure would be helpful to have comments from you to help and direct us in the direction we should go.
And in the meantime, while we're doing this, we shared the toolkit again. Somebody asked, how can public places and private places, just type your answers in, type over my talking, but someone asked, is there a way for public and private places to have info up that people can see and get help? Let me say, absolutely. One of the other things, I know I'm pushing our website a lot, but we just got a new website and I love it, but it has information about posters that every healthcare setting has to have, that publicizes the National Human Trafficking Hotline number. And we have those posters in English and Spanish. They help all the healthcare folks in our worlds comply with the new Florida law, but they're also great for other workplaces. So check out our website again and look under resources and posters. We got 500 of those out in the community just in the last month. Thank you, Bianca. You posted it. Great. So check that out. We do have information, and we can help you get more information as well. So maybe we can put that on the list, Pastor, for the next time we do this. And just have information kits available so that during this pandemic, we can have everybody get hold of them digitally, to share them.
Okay.
And Pastor, looks like someone's saying maybe do table talks tasks for teenagers. So split it up into some of the vulnerable groups. I think that's a great idea. Also for, we were talking about disabled, or I was just on with Elise. I don't know if she's still on Dawson with DCF, Circuit 2s and Circuit 14 about human trafficking. And I was on a training today and they were talking about a specific case. And this little girl who the case came up when she turned 13, she's hearing impaired. So she was hearing impaired, her mom was hearing impaired, was involved in the trafficking to a certain extent. Dad was hearing impaired, grandfather was involved. So again, maybe we could look at specializing some talks for caregivers and for some of our
great idea.
Disabled groups would be good as well.
Great. And I just, we have a note from Leslie Steele, the Public Information Officer for Gadsden County. And yay, Leslie, thanks. I'm glad to see you're here. And we know where to find you, and we look forward to continuing the conversation, definitely. So, and maybe getting your help in here. Thank you for joining us too.
Yes. Okay. We're moving to the next one.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes.
I just want to know if the 9 o'clock p.m. curfew is still in effect in Gadsden County. I know this COVID, they should stay home, but I just want to know if this 9 o'clock curfew is still in effect.
No, not at this time. We are looking at some things. We are seeing an increase daily of about 80 people a day in Gadsden are, getting COVID. So we're looking at things right now, and at our weekly resolution, we post it on our website every week to let you know where it stands. Every Friday it expires at midnight, and we replace it with the new resolution. But at this present time, we do not have a curfew in place. That's something that the board may want to look at in the future if we continue to see a rise in COVID cases.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. We got some other comments in about Boys and Girls Club, refuge houses, churches, printed material, medical centers. Brent, I'm not sure what were you responding to when you said that you think those are opportunities for outreach for us? And maybe he'll type in, or we will hear from him again. Yes, opportunities for outreach for sure. And with some of these we've done, and again, I really hope we can use the social media outlets for all of us. Bianca, let me ask you something just crosses my mind. Bianca, do you want to talk to people about social media and what they can do? This is your wheelhouse, and you've done such great work with STAC on this. So Bianca, can you unmute yourself and give people some tips about doing some outreach?
I can. Hey, everybody. Thank you guys for all tuning in this evening. As far as social media, please go to our Facebook page, which is Survive and Thrive Advocacy Center, or facebook.com/StackFL. We have an abundance of posts about human trafficking awareness, and we post very often about our First Friday trainings. This particular month is, like Robin mentioned, a very important month to us. So we have an abundance of trainings, events, things of that nature. So go on our Facebook page. We have them all listed there. We also have them listed on our website. So please share it. Share it with anybody that you think would benefit from those trainings and events. Share the information on your timeline. Like we mentioned before, people don't know, many of the signs, or have a stigma about human trafficking. So if you share information with your timeline, which is the small little arrow button that goes this way, just go ahead and share it, and it'll take you to where you can put it on your timeline, put it in a group that you guys are in, which is like usually a little bit more intimate. So you can share it there, or you can share it via Messenger to anybody that you see fit. So those are your social media tips. And if you're on Instagram, you can share it to your stories. There's a little arrow on Instagram that allows you to share it to your stories. Feel free to take a screenshot and just repost it as well. We encourage that. So thank you guys for all your help.
And definitely, if you thought this was worthwhile, share the word about it. Say you attended, and you know, hope everybody in your kind of orbit will join us next time.
Yes, I'll share the Facebook Live broadcast with you guys in the chat right now. Please share that out. That will allow us to spread the message. We'll get more feedback so that we can modify and move forward with these table talks. So.
Thank you, Bianca. All right, what is next? I don't have an agenda in front of me.
What's next is we're nearing the end. We've got 7 minutes to go. And you know, I'd also, we talked about, Pastor, wondering if we have anybody who would be on this, who'd like to join us to be part of our, you know, our organizing effort, who'd like to be part of what we're doing here. We welcome community participation on our STAT committees. So our social justice committee and any of the other work we do, we'd really love to have you join with us. And gosh, there were just so many great thoughts and ideas. Tracy Stallworth just said, what about connecting with beauty and barbershops? Love that, right? And you know, there's so much we can do. So, so Brent too, thank you from the healthcare world. We know healthcare and the faith community are great places to go for help and information in our rural areas. So, so we want to continue the conversation there. So I think that's kind of the main thrust of everything. Pastor Harris, I'm curious if you have any thoughts about how, what you heard tonight, and any thoughts about moving forward?
I do. I think, first of all, if I could deputize all of you, I'll deputize every one of you right now. Because one of the things that that you know, and I believe that this is a start for us here in terms of the conversational aspect of it. And when we come back again, you help us promote it. And also, as Robin has said, let's get involved with it. Bianca is giving us some tools to use also. Go to the website and see the toolkit. And what we can do is just spread it. So next time we come together, which will not be a very long time from now, we can bring more forces together with it and connect with more people in the community. I would like to thank all of you for coming and being on the chat tonight. It's been an experience for me, and the more we do it, the better we get. The more we do it, the more comfortable we become with talking about different things. And I think I think it'll say each one. Just reach for someone else and bring them with you. And STAC will always be available for information of all kinds. And I thank you for all the ideas and all of your suggestions, and we will take them. And if you have any specific questions that you wanted to ask or not, there's a place to do that also. And I thank for the panelists also tonight. Robin, you always great. Sika, you're great. Bianca, you're always great. Hey, it's great all around. And you who participated tonight, thank you very much for being and listening and giving us all the various suggestions. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Great. And I just put my email in the chat too. It's robin@surviveandthriveadvocacy.org. So if you want to talk to, you know, if we can help in any way facilitate you getting in touch with Pastor Harris or any of the other work we do, we want to do that. We definitely have flyers and lots of information, Tracy, that we can get to you. We have little sticky notes that have the National Human Trafficking Hotline number on them in Creole, Spanish, Vietnamese, and English. So we just haven't done a lot of face-to-face, but I'm happy to get those to you if you are seeing people or can get them out. So definitely let's all be in touch, because this is just the beginning. So it's great. And I guess that will wrap us up. Bianca, now we do have a little poll. We did have a little thing we wanted you to participate with, and I don't know, there we go. So could you all take a look at this, that first poll question? the information about human trafficking during the welcome, and so we can just get a sense of who you are and what you knew before. If you could take a moment and do the poll, it would be great. And Bianca, I think you can see that people are voting. Are they coming in? I don't know how this works, actually.
Yes, they're all coming in. It seems that 14 out of the 19 people who are still here voted, and 57% somewhat knew a little bit about human trafficking, and 38% knew this is not new to them, and
Okay.
6% it's new to them.
Okay, great, great, great. And should we do the other one real quick, Pastor? We had one more poll question.
Yes. Good. What was it? Hold on.
All right, you can see we're going to get our poll stuff organized better the next time, but we'll figure this out. Okay, there's the answer. Good.
Great. Thank all of you. Thank all of you. And please continue to spread the word. We're looking for some redwood trees, and y'all are redwood trees tonight. Thank you so much. So much.
All right, very good.
Bye. That's it.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.